told me earlier, and I found this really hard to believe because I just didn't realize they were this enormous and leverage this many people. But she said last year they had 3,000 volunteers help them with Theater Cedar Rapids. That's a lot of people in this community to bring together. So that this community really supports ours. They support Theater Cedar Rapids. And this is our opportunity to get involved with some of the amazing things going on over there. And we're just fighting with HDMI.
Sorry.
We do have an adapter. Yeah, that thing will go over here. You have the adapter. Yep.
This guy. Okay.
Yeah. Life tech.
Yes.
So I'm going to hand it off to Katie and let her introduce her team. Some of them are from downtown, Theater Cedar Rapids, that building. I know Ben, right? You're just across the street. Ben? Dan. Just across the street. That's where they build the sets for Theater Cedar Rapids, really close to us. Maybe that's part of a project here. I'm going to hand it off. Everybody give it up for this entire team and Katie.
Executive Director at Theater Cedar Rapids. This is my colleague Hannah Spina, who is our Outreach Coordinator. Ben Lauer is our Technical Director, and Daniel Kelchin is our Scenic Director. And we are so excited to be talking with you guys today. We actually have two projects to share with you. Theater Cedar Rapids has been downtown in our current building since 1981, but we are almost 85 years old as a theater company. We're about to celebrate our 85th season, and that's why we wanted to come and talk with you. I'm gonna go to the next one. We are working on ways that we can really celebrate our 85th season, which will be in 1819, with a lot of dynamic and excitement and storytelling. And so we're hoping that you might want to join us in doing research and diving into the stories that make TCR what it is. We were founded by Grant Wood and a bunch of cool friends when they wanted to make theater in his studio, and then we grew into what we are today. So we're excited to get a season out there that really showcases what these 85 years plus have been. We did take time off in the 1940s because of the war efforts. But if we go to the next slide, you can see kind of a little bit about where we've been and where we are today. So if you've been to a recent show, it's probably going to look more like the one down there in the center. But when we started in our building, it'll be like this photo here on your right. Hannah gives a ton of tours at TCR, and I wanted her to share a story about maybe her favorite part of the building that might be cool to be looking into.
So we were built in 1928 as a vaudeville house and movie theater. And have you guys ever been to Paramount Theater? Yeah? Okay. You know how they have that big dome? Yeah. Well, we used to have one too. There's not a great photo of that in here, but, oh yes, there it is, at the very top. See, there's our dome. So we used to have 3 balcony levels actually, or 3 chunks of seats, and we covered up 2 of them so we could put up a rehearsal space. So the dome is no longer visible, but it's still there, and we've been able to go up there and like crawl around in it and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. And if you're in the rehearsal space, you can still see the original projection booth from when it was a movie theater, and a tiny little staircase that goes up there. So it's just a really cool, it's cool to visit those parts of the building and see what it used to be once upon a time.
So this project, in celebration of our 85 years, the sky is the limit in terms of the type of storytelling you might imagine. We're interested in multimedia storytelling. We're interested in using the exterior of our space to share our story with the streets of Cedar Rapids. Of course, we want to engage with this story when we do our season announcement, which will be in March, and find ways to share our story on social media and also with some takeaways. We have a lot of folks walk into our lobby that want to know more, and we don't have a great way to showcase our history right now. So we're hoping that you might want to join us in digging through these stories and come up with a narrative with us. If we want, we can take questions on this project now, or do you want to roll to the next one?
So we got 2 projects we'll be pitching. Let's, if you have any Q&A on this project, the first one should just now pitch. Go ahead and get those out. Yeah.
Daniel, do you have any questions?
No, I got to drive.
Any questions? Come on.
Kevin.
Eric Coldhouse, you got a question in the back, don't you?
My LFS classmates.
BFF?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not sure what I misunderstood, like, what exactly is the project?
Sure. The project is creating a marketing campaign and a history narrative. So we're looking at ways to showcase our story for our 85th season, and we'll be announcing that 85th season in March. So this would entail really diving into all types of archives. We have some archives now, but there's so much about TCR that lives with the city. So it's figuring out who we are and how we came to be, and working with us to tell the story creatively. It might be that you find a person in our history, and it's through that person's eyes that we want to talk about these 85 years. We also want to be looking toward the future, and so it's talking about how our programming is informing what's going on our stage next. So it'll be tied directly with programming and marketing.
Just like showcasing your guys' anniversary, like what's the timeline? Is it like one day and then be stretched out for like a month or a week?
Sure. The question is, what's the timeline of the history showcase? We will do a season announcement event in March of next spring, but then this project will carry on through the entire next year. So there would be work that goes into this fall and in the spring to get us ready for a March rollout or announcement where we'd incorporate pieces of this project, but then we'd use the project to carry forward into the entire next season. So you might come up with an idea that we want to tell a story on our exterior windows about people who have made costumes at TCR. So we would find ways to showcase costume making on our windows, perhaps for the entire year. So it has legs to be a 2-year project.
Any other cues? Yep.
So like I know this is like in the far future, but like is this like a thing you plan on doing like every like certain decade or so?
This is a really good opportunity to get a groundwork laid for our 90th season as well. That'll come up, in 6 years. So hopefully with these anniversary years, they would be in the 5, so 85, 90, 95. Any questions?
All right. If you come up with other questions, they're not leaving yet because we're going to shift gears to project 2.
So, if you've been to a show at TCR, hopefully you were wowed and thought that things came together seamlessly, which of course they did with the leadership of these 2 gentlemen to my left. We create these magical worlds on our stage constantly. We're doing 9 productions of our own this season. Sometimes we do more, and a lot of that work starts right over at the Cherry Building. We are building sets, we are designing sets, we're working with directors in rehearsals, and this project is a bit more open-ended, and it's open-ended to where your interests lie, but based in technical theater. So we have opportunities for you to work with us in our scene shop, to work with us on our design elements, to work with us backstage in sound and lighting, and to be a part of each show that we put on as a backstage crew member or someone who's doing part of the design that gets the shows to their curtain call. So we're really interested in what you're interested in here. I'm going to hand it over to Ben, who's just going to talk a little bit about the magic of technical theater.
Thank you, Katie. So in technical theater basically encompasses everything that happens tech-wise on stage. And starting from the concept of a show. And that happens months and months before it gets on stage. Basically, we go through a process of design or figuring out what our season is going to be, right? How each show will play off of the other shows, so it all is like a nice congruent season, right? And then we choose directors and designers for each show. And those team members meet and they decide what each show is going to be about and what it's going to look like. So just like I don't know, a TV series, Walking Dead, right? Every element of that show is designed from the ground up, right? Nothing happens just willy-nilly and it just appears or whatever. They actually sit down and plan it out on paper or on the computer or whatever it is and plan out the look of everything. And we do that on a slightly smaller budget scale. On stage, right? The director and the designer, Daniel is one of our in-house designers. They'll meet with the rest of the creative team, costumes, lighting, sound, everything. And they figure out, what is this show going to look like? And then they'll start going through iterations of these designs and come up with this final look, right? I don't know if you want to talk about that part, design.
Hi, I'm Ben.
Hi, Daniel.
So step one of the design process, we generally have, a number of you raised your hands because you've seen a live production. How many have read a play from a book? Because that changes everything, and that's where the design process begins. You read the play, and then as the designer, you have to decide what area you want that show to fall in. Where do you want it to fall in history? Where do you want it to fall in location? Where do you want it to fall with color? Do you want your set to be all in grayscale or black and white? Do you want it crazy colorful like we saw on our last slide when we saw, I think it was a Mary Poppins setup? We get to decide all of these things. Do we want it to look real and literal? Do you want a house? If you need a house, do you need it to look like a house? Or can you just tear down half of the wall and the audience will be smart enough to say, they're probably in a house? We get to make all of those decisions with the design process. And that starts with the concept meeting, when all of those people he just listed are present in the same space talking about the show they have all read together. That goes forward, and then as the designer, so coming from my perspective, I will take my design ideas and a pencil and put it all on paper. There are plenty of designers who do all of their designing through a computer. They'll use AutoCAD drafting programs, and they'll use things like Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator and things along those lines. I do it all with a pencil because I'm bad with computers. So I walked up here and saw all the yours and got nervous. Computers aren't my forte. I'd rather do it with my hand. I'd rather use the art skills that I have from my hand to put this idea on paper. And then in our second or third meeting, we lay out these designs for the rest of the team and basically say, here's the set that was designed. Can your costumes match this? Can the sound cues fall into this? What kind of lighting can the lighting designer throw at this idea that is currently on paper and make it another character in our story? And after that is designed, then this happens.
So then he hands me a whole bunch of drafting of drawings of what the design will look like, should look like, right? And then I take that and I tear it all apart, figure out how much it's going to cost, because that's what she's interested in, and if we can afford it, and how we're going to build it, what materials to use, how many materials I need, all that stuff. And then I draft it all out, and then it goes to the shop, and that's where the cherry building is. And that's a lot of where a lot of opportunities would be for you all, is to help us build these things. So learning how to use big tools like the table saw, the miter saw, the welder, if they're steel, chop saws, that sort of thing. Smaller tools as well, just to put all of this stuff together to a point where it gets ready to go over to Daniel again, who puts the finished coats on everything, like painting.
We're just doing this because we're both uncomfortable outside of the shop setting. So the nature of what we do to construct the show, to paint the show, to texture the show, to tear the show apart and take it over to the theater through one set of double doors, one pickup truck load at a time. That's where you really come in. We're tired of carrying things. You have the opportunity to mix phenomenally dangerous power tools with exceptionally loud music in the middle of a creative process with two people with social anxiety. And all of those things together make for a really pleasurable experience for upwards of 10, 12,000 people in our audience per main stage show. For example, last year when we turned out Beauty and the Beast, we had upwards of 12,400 people that came to see that one show. That show wasn't just actors on the stage. That was a phenomenal block of costumes. That was a phenomenal color palette. palette, an exceptional lighting design, a really fun and interesting scenic design filled with levels, filled with color, filled with texture. All of those things came together not because of the idea of one person or the work of one or two people, but the entirety of the team that exists down on the corner of 1st Avenue and 3rd Street, as well as our efforts inside the shop, which we've had for somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 years in the Cherry Building. So it's an old dusty shop. You wouldn't expect to find anything else over there, but the amount of things that we're able to turn out of that shop in a short amount of time, because we understand the roles each one of us plays in that space, is phenomenal. And if there's interest to come from any of you in being a part of that process, we always have room for more. 3,000 volunteers last year, something in the neighborhood of 56,000 volunteer labor hours. That's the equivalent of 40 extra full-time employees. That's pretty extreme. So we're able to do it with 20 because we have the community and people like yourselves with an interest to help us do what we do so well. Good enough? I'm nervous now, my ears just got hot. Thanks.
One more thing. A great opportunity would be for somebody to come in at the build process and start building here at the Cherry Building, putting a set together, move into painting, coatings, texture, that sort of finishing process, tear the set apart in the Cherry Building, bring it over to the theater, set it back up, do the finishing touches on it, like put molding on, put touch-up, paint touch-ups, and then at the end of that whole process, we go into tech. And that's all. Our entire run crew backstage is volunteers, and where they're moving scenery around, they're doing whatever has to happen. They're running the soundboard or light board or spot operators, whatever. So that's another opportunity to get into it and be backstage and be part of every single performance as part of that performance team. And those people backstage are, they're the people that make the show happen, right? We couldn't do it without people backstage moving things around, flying things in and out, doing all that stuff. So it's another good opportunity.
And on top of exactly what he's saying, a word of advice. How many people here are interested in performing? How many people like to perform? Not many? A few. Good enough. With that opportunity to be a part of the crew, to be a part of the people you never really see but make the show happen, are such an integral part of the process. There's a lot of people that want to perform. There's a lot of people that want to stand in the spotlight. And I know you're in high school and you're looking forward from there. There's a lot less people that are interested in being part of the technical crew that makes the show happen or runs the show from the backstage. And there is a lot of scholarship opportunity that exists if you have experience in those kind of fields. If you know how to paint, if you know how to build, if you know how to run backstage in a show, everyone wants to stand in the spotlight at some point. That's the easy job. It's everyone that you can't see that has the hard work and does the hard work. And college will pay for that, I promise they will.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, let's give it up. All right, thanks Katie and your team. Thanks guys.